Hey, listen up. This is a Porsche 911 GTS coupe, a car that by some is considered to be the best non-GT 911 you can buy. So I'm going to put that to the test by first covering the details that make the GTS different than other 911s, and then take it for a quick drive. So let's find out what this GTS is all about. So the Porsche 911 GTS. Now I've been lucky enough to drive basically most variants of the 911 except for the GT3 and this, the coupe version of the GTS. So I'm genuinely curious on how Porsche is splitting the GTS's character with the rest of the lineup. Now before jumping in, a thank you to Porsche of downtown LA for access to this GTS. If you want a Porsche product, give them a call and I'm confident you'll be taken care of. Now back to the 911, so this being the GTS, the word that's always used is sweet spot. And initially I thought that was the perfect word for it. But now after living through so many GTS models, I feel like it's becoming a little cliche. So I like to use the word balanced instead. So it's balanced because it takes the regular 911 body and upgrades it using performance parts from the higher 911 models. Or maybe another way to look at it is that it's a tamed GT3 or Turbo S. Nonetheless, first let's cover the details about the changes the GTS gets compared to the other 911s, and then we'll take it for a drive. So first things first, the engine. It's the familiar 3-liter twin turbocharged Boxer 6 making 473 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. Now if you're keeping track, that's 30 more horsepower than the Carrera S. And amongst the many things Porsche is doing to give the GTS more power, one of them is to turn the boost up to 18.6 psi. And as a result of all of this, the GTS coupe with the PDK accelerates to 60 in 3.2 seconds and 3.9 seconds with the manual. The suspension is equipped with PASM Sport, which Porsche tuned specifically for the GTS, and it also gets a 10mm lowered ride height. Next, it's got the braking system from the Turbo, which are massive brakes to begin with, but this one takes it even further because it's got the carbon ceramics signified by the yellow calipers. Next, you've got a standard sport exhaust system, which when combined with the reduced sound deadening on the interior, should provide for a more engaging driving experience. So speaking of the interior, the GTS gets a lot more standard Alcantara compared to other 911s, and it's supposed to make it look and feel sportier in here. But much to my personal preference, this example has substituted a lot of that Alcantara for leather. And the reason why I prefer it this way is because Alcantara, when not taken care of course, can look a little beat up over time. And you don't want a beat up looking interior in your 911. Now switching over into this seat, this is the 18-way seat and I cannot advocate enough for this seat. Yes, I know it's a little expensive compared to the 14 and the 8-way seat, but in my mind they're worth it because they are very comfortable. And that's important even further because the 911 is a stiff riding car and having comfortable seats to counterbalance that is again very important. Now, speaking of the seat and blending that into the spec, which is always very important for 911s, it's almost like the person checking the boxes for this car kind of was trying to balance between resale value with checking the box for carbon ceramics and the Python green paint, and also maintaining some daily drivable comfort features like the 18-way seat as opposed to going all out resale value and going with the carbon buckets. So nonetheless, last thing I wanted to cover was PCM very quickly, and PCM has iterated into a better system throughout its life cycle. It's very easy to use, it's simple, the graphics are nice, and I'm not going to go into much more detail than that. Just know that it's one of my favorite infotainment systems in the car industry in general. So with all that out of the way, now let's take this thing on the road and see what it drives like. All right, so now let's see what this thing feels like behind the wheel. Let's go ahead and put our fancy yellow seatbelt on here. Turn this thing on. Ignition is on the left if you're new to Porsche. And it fires up. The 911 exhaust note is nice, and of course this does have the sports exhaust as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and put it in Sport Plus mode, which will automatically turn that on. So some specs about this car: it does have Porsche dynamic chassis control, it does have rear wheel steering, and I'll tell you exactly how that's translating to the drive. But I'm going to be greeted with a straight stretch of road immediately, and we're going to test the acceleration of this GTS. So we're going to come to a complete stop. I'm not going to use launch control. Let's go for it. Oh, it hugs. Oh, wow. Brakes. I got a stop sign here, and I kind of did this here on purpose to kind of test the brake. But now we come to another stop. The brake is unbelievable. I'll tell you more about it here in a second. Stop. Go again. It's almost like it preloads and does the launch control for you. Wow. The exhaust noise coming through is really, really nice. Downshift there with the PDK sounds amazing. Wow. Whew. Okay, let's go again. Stop. No, we're gonna go from a little bit of a roll here. 9 miles an hour. Oh. Wow, 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 wow. This is so fast. Okay, one more time, and then I'll tell you exactly what this feels like. Wow! Oh man, this car is stupidly fast. Oh, it's so easy to drive as well. Oh, I'm breaking a sweat here. It's really hot in SoCal today. Let me go ahead and turn the AC up a little bit. But man, this thing, oh, the ferocity of acceleration is just ludicrous. And whew, man, let's all handling on rails. PDK. Oh my goodness. This thing is making me sweat. It's making me work. Holy crap, this thing is so remarkable. Such a precise machine. Holy crap. And the steering feedback and the overall feel, it just feels so buttoned down. Wow, 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 wow. The PDK is doing its thing, and it's almost like it's reading my mind here. Okay. Woo! Heart's beating a little faster than resting, that's for sure. Oh my goodness, this thing is a remarkable, remarkable car. I mean, the 911 by itself, the 992 generation, is an insane platform. And you can feel there's a little bit more here than the regular Carrera S. And man, okay, so I'm gonna catch my breath here for a second and tell you what this thing feels like. Back into normal mode. All right, so in terms of speed, this thing is so exhilarating, so fast, so remarkably fast. The gauge I like to use when I drive these 911s and when I'm splitting these hairs amongst the trims. I've driven the Turbo S, I've driven the Base, I've driven the Carrera S, and now this GTS. When I drove the Turbo S, that car made me lightheaded. The acceleration is so violent in that car, and the torque and the overall shove that it delivers is just insane. So that gives me lightheadedness. This car is right on the border of giving me lightheadedness, and that's saying something, because usually when a car gets me lightheaded, it's like an EV car and the acceleration is just monstrous. But this is on a completely different level. I do feel that this is faster than a Carrera S, and that's saying something because the Carrera S is underrated and remarkably fast already. But you can definitely tell that there's a little bit more juice here, and this feels a lot closer to the Turbo S than it does the Carrera S in terms of acceleration. And Switching to the brake, I mean, this is the carbon ceramic brake, and Porsche's carbon ceramic brake is wonderful. It's no different here. It stops on a dime. The braking power is insane, and the sensitivity and the initial tip and bite that you get is to my preference and absolutely wonderful. And switching to the suspension, this does have, like I said, the PDCC, of course, the adaptive PASM shocks, and the rear wheel steering. Rear wheel steering is wonderful. You can tell it helps really rotate the car, and especially in daily driving, it does have a lot of practical usage in that arena for 3-point turns and being able to navigate a lot quickly. And I was driving it around here. You noticed there were some train tracks earlier on, and I was testing it in this area, and in normal mode and PDCC, everything in the comfort mode, this thing feels quite compliant actually, and combined with the 18-way seat, which I think is a big determining factor in driving your 911 on a daily basis, is getting the 14 or the 18-way seat. If you can get the 18-way seat, get it, because it really feels a lot more comfortable than any of the other seats. Beyond just daily driving, from a sporty standpoint, this thing feels like it is on absolute rails. It feels quite light, even though 911s have kind of gained weight over the generations, but this feels fantastic. It doesn't even have the lightweight package, which should drop it another 55 pounds, but it feels like it is on rails. Steering input is great, very precise steering, and the overall feel, the way it tightens up the weight, that is one of the nice things about Porsche's electronic steering rack. It doesn't feel too fake and too artificial, and as good as it gets in terms of electronic steering racks. All in all, I think this is really cutting close to the edge, because the suspension is stiff and I'm being aided by that 18-way seat, but it is getting pretty close. Granted, I haven't driven a GT3, and I'd imagine that is kind of too stiff for the road, but this is kind of that nice balance where you've got an unbelievable amount of sportiness and enough comfort for you to be able to drive it on a daily basis and not get too beat up about it. So that's the Porsche 911 GTS. The Carrera and the Carrera S are great cars in and of themselves. And the Carrera T is almost aimed at a different audience, with the base motor available with the manual transmission. But this GTS, at least in my opinion, I think is best noted as a tamed Turbo or Turbo S more than anything else. So that's all I've got. If you've got any questions, please make sure you leave me a comment down below or send me a message on Instagram @DriveSteady. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.